All right, starting off with an update on Syria. The United Nations in Syria is urgently appealing for help to stem the catastrophic situation for tens of thousands of people, both from East Ghouta and Afrin. The UN and its partners have been informed of the desperate conditions of people who have left East Ghouta and Afrin and who are tired, hungry, and traumatized and afraid. And we need to provide them with urgent aid. These civilians are facing harrowing humanitarian conditions. Many remain trapped by conflict. All are in desperate need. Insecurity and fierce hostility continue to endanger the people of East Ghouta. Since March 11th, at least 25,000 people have reportedly left East Ghouta. UN teams have been visiting on a daily basis the collective shelters in Dwer, Adra, and Herjela in rural Damascus, where people who have left East Ghouta are staying. All of the shelters are well over capacity, with more people continuing to arrive on a daily basis. Most of the people interviewed had some health conditions, likely due to years of lack of access to medicine and health care. Meanwhile, nearly 100,000 people have been displaced by hostilities in Afrin district. The majority of some 75,000 people have fled to Tal Rafat, and the remainder went to Nubul, Zara, and surrounding villages. The massive influx of internally displaced people is putting a strain on host communities, which are already overwhelmed. All 16 schools in Tal Rafat are being used as internally displaced shelters, resulting in the interruption of education. And back here, the Emergency Relief Coordinator, Mark Lowcock, briefed the Security Council following his visit to the Democratic Republic of the Congo last week. He stressed that humanitarian needs in the country have doubled over the last year, with 13 million people in need of assistance in a context of persistent insecurity and bureaucratic impediments. He added that the single largest impediment to the humanitarian response was underfunding. This year, the appeal requires $1.7 billion, nearly 4 times what was secured last year. The Emergency Relief Coordinator encouraged the high-level participation pledges by the Security Council members to the first-ever humanitarian conference in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which will be organized on April 13th in Geneva. He stressed that we also need solutions to address the root causes of the worsening crisis, including on the political front, as well as Congo's neighbors who have to behave responsibly. Progress in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is possible, Mr. Lowcock told the Council, saying that infrastructure has improved in many major cities, access to education has increased, and child mortality has fallen. We need to strengthen our support to its people, he added. His remarks are available in my office. A new report issued today by the UN Human Rights Office and the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo says the right to freedom of peaceful assembly was severely restricted and often violently suppressed in the country in 2017, and the trend continues so far this year. The report is based on information collected during the six main mobilization days. While some people armed with sticks and broomsticks did attempt to perpetuate violence during some protests, the vast majority of demonstrators were peaceful. The use of excessive force, including lethal force by the authorities, was just unlawful, unjustified, and disproportionate, according to the UN report. The special representative for the UN in the DRC, Leila Zerougi, said the report highlights impunity gaps and a continued shrinking of the democratic space in the country observed since the start of 2015. Turning to Mali, our colleagues from the Department of Peacekeeping Operations tell us that they've been informed by the Canadian government of its intention to deploy an aviation unit, including helicopters, to the UN mission in Mali. Canada's contribution will play a valuable role in the continued efforts to bring peace and stability to Mali in the Sahel, and we are grateful to the pledge of these important assets and for Canada's contribution to peacekeeping. We understand the aviation assets should be on the ground in August. Further detail are being discussed between the United Nations and the Canadian government. And our humanitarian colleagues report that an interagency team has been deployed to the districts in Madagascar most affected by Tropical Storm ELIAKIM. Access remains a major challenge, as most of the impacted area is in the northeast, is only accessible by air and sea during the rainy season. 17 deaths have been reported so far. About 2,500 residents have been forced to evacuate. And in Brasilia, UNESCO today launched its World Water Development Report, which highlights nature-based solutions such as generating soils and forests harvesting rain and water, and preserving wetlands to address water management challenges. Nature-based solutions, also known as green infrastructure, can help improve water quality, reduce risks associated with climate change, and enhance water availability. According to the report, water management is heavily dominated by human-built or gray infrastructure, while green infrastructure remains underutilized. UNESCO argues that an approximate mix of green and gray investment can maximize benefits while minimizing costs. The report is on UNESCO's website. Also related to UNESCO, tomorrow my guest will be Guy Berger, the Director of Freedom of Expression and Media Development at UNESCO. And we say thank you to our friends in Bangkok today, as Thailand has paid its regular budget dues in full, bringing us up to 68. I shall now take questions. Masood.
Since yesterday, there have been saber rattling by India and Pakistan over the occupied Kashmir, and even the former Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh accused his successor, Mr. Modi, of fanning flames of fire against Pakistan. And Pakistan and India are now again, being that they're a nuclear state, they're again ready to go to war. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, obviously,
Secretary General?
we following the situation there closely as we always do, and we would encourage dialogue between the parties to settle any outstanding differences.
Besides that you've been saying, has there been any movement that Prime Minister, that the Secretary General has talked to the Prime Minister of either Pakistan or India?
Nothing to report to you at this time, Masood. Yes, ma'am. And then
Now, does Mr. Guterres and the UN in general has already any statement about illegal elections in Crimea territory?
No, I don't have anything at this point, but I hope to have something for you.
Because you may understand that the EU, United States, all the democratic countries already had a statement last week about that. One of the bases of their statements is international law and these decisions of General Assembly.
Our position on Crimea and the following General Assembly resolution is unchanged and will not change. And I will come back to you if I have more. Yes.
Stéphane, I heard your update about the situation in Afrin and the SG's comments in his remarks last week about the situation there. But from the reports on the ground, the situation is way more dire. There are serious accusations of ethnic cleansing, of mass killings. I mean, I have these pictures that we verified in my networks, things like this. I don't know if you can look at it right now. I'm holding it in my hand. These are verified pictures, and these are civilians, and authorities on the ground are saying these pictures, and for the record, are results of deliberate targeting of civilians. Okay, that is why there was a big influx of refugees leaving
what is the question?
The question is why there's lack of reporting, first of all, about the number of casualties, civilian casualties.
Well, as you know, we are not...
And why there's no condemnation from Secretary General and demand Turkey to stop this military operation.
Two things. I think the Secretary General's statement concerning the ongoing fighting and the lack of implementation of Resolution 2401 late last week still stands, and those feelings remain. We have, our humanitarian colleagues have received reports through the Syrian Arab Red Crescent and UNFPA of incidents in Afrin city of threats of violence and arbitrary arrest of civilians, as well as looting of property. The United Nations views these reports with utmost concern and demands the parties to the conflict to respect their obligations under international humanitarian law and human rights law. But I would also repeat that we are not directly present in Afrin at this time.
And one follow-up on that, Stéphane, about the right of the people to return to Afrin and their area. Can you give me any update about that? There are major concern of safety for civilians to return.
Of course, there are concerns of safety. I mean, we understand that there's still some fighting going on. Everyone should be able to return home in a safe and dignified way. What is important for us is that Resolution 2401 be fully implemented. On Crimea, to your question on Crimea, I can say we do not pronounce ourselves on member states' elections absent of a mandate to do so. With regards to the situation in Crimea, the General Assembly expressed itself on several occasions, notably through Resolution 68-262 on the territorial integrity of Ukraine and Resolution 71-205 on the situation of human rights in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. Matthew.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, there's a number of reports around the world about a Myanmar proposed law on international NGOs, which would regulate, it purports to not only international NGOs, but the UN to the degree that it's separate from that. So I'm wondering, and a lot of the group, I know that OCHA sometimes coordinates with NGOs that have these concerns, but it would regulate the UN as well. Is the UN aware of this law? Do they believe that it would apply to them? And what's the status, and I'm sorry to ask this again, but of the envoy that was discussed in September?
No update on the envoy. The discussions are ongoing. I mean, no updates to announce. The discussions are obviously very much ongoing. We're aware of the law. The presence of the UN is regulated through the Charter and through international obligations that member states have. But obviously, we've seen the law is being debated, but I will leave it at that principled response.
Okay. I want to ask you about another principle. I actually have a couple of these, but one is directly, I think, on Department of Political Affairs. Today at the stakeout, Sweden's ambassador, Olaf Skog, basically denied something that's in the DPRK panel of experts report, which is that it's in Annex 6.3. It says that a company based in Sweden falsified the origin of DPRK coal, saying it came from Russia instead of from DPRK. So he says the company's not based in Sweden and that the panel of experts never contacted Sweden to ask. And the bottom of the annex, it says source member state. And so I wanted to ask you as a general matter, given that DPA both staffs these things up and I'm assuming sort of oversees them, what are what's the standard of...
The panel of experts are independent panels that report to the Security Council. It's not, whatever support we give the panel of experts is a secretarial support in terms of hiring, the administrative support that we give. But the reports of the panel of experts is not one that the Secretariat drafts. It's independent panel of experts.
But isn't the pool of people put on? I mean, isn't there? I guess what is the UN's role with these? And is there any? Who would then set the sort of the standards or just the basic guidelines? I'm not trying to.
Well, they also report. They report back to a committee, a sanctions committee, and I'm sure if members of the committee have issue with the panel of experts, or that will be done within the confines of the committee and the Security Council. It's
right.
It's not for the Secretariat to comment.
But not on the specific. But I'm saying, should they ask before these things are published? Do they ask the country, or I thought that was sort of basic?
As I said, it's an independent panel. It's not for me to comment on their work. These are.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen these reports coming from GHOUTA, where some chemical labs were found by the Syrian army, and it was published in The Guardian, for example, on Saturday. Detailed description about these labs. Also allegations by those who are exiting from GHOUTA that the rebels have been testing with these chemical weapons and with the intention of using them.
What is the question?
You've seen these labs probably as published. What is the position of the United Nations regarding the
position of the Secretary General? He stands firmly against any use of chemical weapons, regardless of who uses them. Any use needs to be fully investigated, and there needs to be accountability for those who use them. As you know, our access to East GHOUTA is limited. The OPCW has a mandate to receive reports of the use of chemical weapons. As far as the accountability mechanism, as you know, the Security Council failed to renew the mandate of the Joint Investigative Mechanism.
But you are collecting information from those who are exiting GHOUTA, as you did in the past. I mean, in the past when you accused, you said there are reports, but we cannot ignore them.
So what is the question?
Do you ignore? I mean,
we don't ignore any information that is given to us.
Are you checking with these exiting?
Whatever information we get, we would not ignore any information. Yes, sir.
Thank you. In Nigeria, human rights.
Your microphone, please. There we go. You're good. Oh.
In Nigeria, human rights group, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project has written to the UN Security Council to designate the armed herdsmen operating the country as a terrorist organization following the attacks in the north-central Nigeria. I want to know if the UN has received the letter, and also the DSG's visit to Nigeria this weekend. Is the issue going to form part of her consultations with the Nigerian leaders?
I will get you an update on the Deputy Secretary General's visit, and I'll see if there is actually if we can confirm the receipt of the letter. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Stéphane. I'm sorry if you talked about this, but I arrived a little late.
If you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
Canada mentioned over the weekend they were going to send helicopters and troops to support the UN mission in Mali. Mm-hmm. There were not a lot of details. I wonder if you can tell us more specifically the amount of helicopters and troops that are going to be sent, and if you can give us an update on historically how many troops have been killed in that mission.
I can't give you that update off the top of my head, but as we know, Mali has been one of the deadliest peacekeeping missions for UN peacekeepers over the last few years. Unfortunately, on a monthly basis almost, if not more, we have seen peacekeepers being attacked, targeted, or killed by improvised explosive devices. On the Canadian contribution, they will be sending an aviation unit, which should be deployed in August. This aviation unit includes helicopters. I'll try to get you the exact numbers, but obviously this is very much a welcomed development, very much a welcomed announcement by the Canadian government. As you know, Canada has a long and storied presence in UN peacekeeping, and we're very glad that they will be represented in Mali with such a key deployment.
The initial announcement a few years back was of about 600 troops. Is that what they're going to be
right
sending?
now? What we've been able to confirm is the intention to deploy an aviation unit.
Just so no troops.
Well, again, an aviation unit comes deployed with support personnel, but I'm not aware of any infantry or specific troop deployment. Matthew.
Sure. I'm just going to go now on this, since you're going to look into the Deputy Secretary General's trip to Nigeria. I wanted to know, previously when she was there, the issue of the 47 Cameroonian, many of them UNHCR, accredited or whatever, designated refugees being refueled to Cameroon. That issue. Does the UN know any more about where those 47 people are?
Nothing more than what we said at the time.
And another part of her trip, I guess either just after that, she's going to the Czech Republic about ECOSOC. So I was going to, and may still ask Brendan this, but I wanted to ask you this. It has arisen, the group, the China Energy Fund Committee, the founder or the ultimate owner in Shanghai has reportedly been brought in for questioning, and it turns out he was not only an advisor to Sam Kutesa as PGA, but also an advisor to the Czech Republic president. So the Czech Republic has sent people to sort of look into his situation, but the Czech Republic also has the presidency of ECOSOC. So noting that I haven't gotten any answer from the Czech
I think
my question is,
those are questions that you should address to the presidency of ECOSOC.
I guess, but my question is an overall UN question. Is there any? It seems like it might be a conflict of interest if your president has a business relationship with an NGO to be in charge of the committee that is
that's a question for member states. That's a question for member states. Member states elect the presidency of ECOSOC. They elect the bureau. Those are member state questions. I struggle to answer the questions directed to the Secretary General. I think member states need to answer other questions.
Okay, let me, DPKO question.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yalla.
the government of Japan has disclosed in response to a House of Representatives inquiry that two, and this is a very serious thing, two of their self-defense forces that were deployed in South Sudan have committed suicide since they returned to the country. They say it's not related to the service, others feel differently, but my question to you is really, I mean, most militaries in the world conduct some kind of studies of like post-traumatic stress, what happens to people after they deploy. And I'm wondering, maybe I don't think you'll know it off the top of your head, but has DPKO ever looked at this issue? I mean, maybe they
I don't know.
leave it up to member
I'll check,
states.
but obviously,
It
you know,
seems
I
serious.
will check the welfare and the conduct of the troops is the responsibility of the troop contributing country. That being said, I will check with DPKO. Masuji, and then we'll go to Brendan.
Thank you. So grateful to you. I just two questions on the visit of the Saudi King Salman, who's visiting the United States as of today, and he'll be meeting President Trump, I think, tomorrow. And they will, in fact, he will ask for more arms and ammunition, which is being used in Yemen.
Your question, sir.
There are two questions, sir. Number one question is, will the Crown Prince come here, and will the United Nations talk to him about Yemen and the situation over there, and to let go of
he is not, as far as I know, he's not scheduled to come this week, but we will check. I know he's in the U.S. for quite some time. I will check if there is a meeting we can confirm.
Okay. Now, on the human rights issue of Saudi Arabia, there have been reports as of published in BBC and stuff like that, that he has, the man who is now King Salman, he has disallowed his mother to visit his father for the last year and a half, and that is considered to be
I'm not aware. I'm not aware of the reports
report.
I'm not aware of the reports going on within that family.
That's
over to
human
you,
rights
Brendan.
abuse.
Thank you.